You have probably seen a YouTube video about sand traps, because being a block with gravity, you can take advantage of it for evil things, such as the typical sand trap and TNT, which will make it fall. An interesting thing is that only those players who played before 1.13 will remember that we could make the best sand traps only using grass. The only thing we had to do was place the tall grass, but it didn't only work with this item, also with the ferns, with the rose bushes, with the peonies, or even with the lilacs. Just placing sand right on a wall, not directly on the grass, because if it doesn't break, we could make this type of bridge. But the most incredible thing is when we broke the leaves below, getting a completely legal floating arena. If the player tried to place a block on top, until then it would fall. And of course, people took advantage of this trick to trap players. First, they made large areas with this trick and decorated with a nice fish hook. The player calmly pressed a pressure plate and everything went to the vegetable. This epic method no longer works. Nowadays, our player can be placed in a space of one block, and it is as simple as using a trapdoor. Or if you are in Minecraft Bedrock, it will be as simple as placing yourself in water. How could the ancient players do this? When this mechanism didn't exist to be able to crouch over, the players got on picks, took out their cane with carrots and went to an area one by one. There we can see how the player is getting into it, and surprisingly, he is going through a single block. It didn't work on the trapdoors. The players would get stuck. There was no swimming animation either. You could only do this, and it was quite dangerous because you could suffocate. If you have ever made a museum for zombies, you will know that it is necessary to place a roof so that they don't burn. However, previously the veterans could do something very cool. In all versions, if you place, for example, some sand of souls and surrounded by fences, you could capture zombies and they will never burn. This is how people kept their zombies. It was something spectacular that zombies survived this arena of souls. Watch how, if I remove this zombie from the arena, it's going to start burning, a method that is no longer used. Have you ever noticed that the ancient players used wool to build and that today we no longer use it? And to demonstrate it, we will do a very fun dynamic. I will place a counter on the screen and I will search on internet for recent constructions and old construction. We will analyze the amount of wool that we find in each construction. We start with the old ones: wool in the windows, wool in the circles, wool in this modern house, wool in this wooden construction, more wool in this medieval house, another wool construction, a wool floor, a mega stadium where the majority are blocks of wool, gray wool on the walls, blue wool ceilings. But now let's see the new constructions. Pure quartz blocks. This right here is yellow terracotta, green concrete, blue concrete, black stone blocks, white terracotta, gray concrete. It's not wool, it's quartz. Prismarine. No blocks of wool around here, not wool either. And more quartz. I invite you to search on your own. You will see how people have almost completely stopped building with wool. Nowadays, there are much more beautiful blocks than wool. Before they used the wool as quartz, until quartz arrived. Also, the gray wool simulated a kind of stone, but today we have a beautiful terracotta and beautiful stone blocks like deep slate. And yes, the carpets are still used, but practically wool blocks are no longer used for decoration. The soul sand block has completely changed raid mechanisms in Minecraft, and not only provides us with another world, but also has interesting properties with water. Since the bubbles were added, people have taken advantage of it for great things, especially everything to transport items. For example, using these water connections, we launch items and thanks to the Sand of Souls, they will start to rise. But of course, Minecraft veterans will remember that this didn't exist years ago. But then, how could they do this type of elevators? Before, people used glass. With glass, you could make elevators, like this one here, making a kind of huge wall, and due to some bugs that existed with the fences. Notice how when you throw a few items here, they will all start to go up automatically. The items somehow suffocated between the blocks, and when they were suffocating in these blocks, they simply went up. Although this wasn't perfect, since many items ended up leaving the system. Curiously, this still works in new versions. You can see how I can throw items and it goes up slowly. However, there may also be some bugs. So ordinary people prefer water currents. And you? Did you know that in the past our ancestors couldn't use fireworks with elytras? Yes, life at that time was complicated. But then, how could people propel themselves without the need for fireworks? Well, the veterans use a method that is no longer used. That is how I'm in old versions, and I start planning and the firework doesn't work. Because of this, people have to find a solution. So people use their own bows with recoil, and this was a nightmare. Once you got going downstairs, you had to hit your own bow, and those get propelled. Very annoying to do, and quite complicated. Obviously, this method is no longer used, as it is much easier to use artificial fire. Did you know that in old days, the players had the golden villagers? These villagers were also known as perfect villagers, and they were super loved by the players. However, they ceased to exist until version 1.7. First, as you know, when we traded a lot with a villager, these end up getting blocked after a while, but in all versions this was different. Yes, when you exchange a lot with a villager, it also ended up being blocked, but they had something quite different. Because when you unlocked all the exchanges of a villager, just the last trade couldn't be blocked. Watch me give emeralds for pants. Bam! You will see it's not blocked. Then I can keep trading infinitely. This worked with all the villagers. But the gold villagers, where those rare villagers gave you an epic exchange at the end. For example, in this one that I got at the end, let's imagine that now he gives me some coal for emeralds completely free. I could create an infinite emerald farm without stopping. Since I don't know how to block, it will always be active. And did you know the perfect golden villagers? As you know, observers detect when a block is updated, but in the Spanish channel I have already told you that this comes from a bug, the famous bot switch. You can see how it is updated. Later Mojang decided to add this block officially, but I will give you a question. Have you seen those flying machines with slime? Well, you can see that this type of flying machines use too many observers. No matter what mechanism you find on the internet, absolutely all of them have observers. How did our ancestors create flying machines? Well, incredibly, they didn't need observers. They took advantage of the bug switch. But in flying machines, what you are seeing here is a flying machine that doesn't use any observers, and it's done in very old versions. It's a very old method that obviously already exists today. It is not used because it is obviously much easier to use observers in these flying machines. In all versions, the player could cover himself with a sword, giving rise to the old block hitting method, which consisted of left-clicking and right-clicking at the same time. The best PvP players use it, but did you know that in modern versions, if you click left and right-click at the same time, we get a very similar visual effect? Just look at this, I take cover and attack at the same time. But don't get your hopes up, because this method no longer works. This no longer works because in Java Edition we have the cooldown, like this, that you will do almost no damage with the sword. Did you know that I am able to guess where there are diamonds in the world? I'm going to show you. I am going to a swamp. Watch what I do. I place a block here. We count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are going to be diamonds right here. And if you don't believe me, watch out. We're going down, we remove the water, we go down, we go down, we go down, and here we have it. Diamond. This trick is completely real, and it is using the clay stains of the swamps. In this video here, I explain it perfectly. Unfortunately, this trick only works now in 1.17. It will take a long time to explain this method, so I prefer that you go to see the video. On the left, you have a video interesting about Minecraft, and on the right, you have another one suggested by the YouTube algorithm.